This is the Hidden Killers Podcast with Tony Brueski and continuing coverage of the case against Bryan Kohberger.
And continuing it is indeed, and hopefully coming to an end shortly. Today was the sentencing of Bryan Kohberger. We're going to be breaking down what we saw in those victim impact statements, what was heard, what was seen, what was not heard, and what was not seen. Another element to this. Joining me, Bob Motta, defense attorney, host of the podcast Defense Diaries. Bob, welcome. We both watched it on our respective channels, and yeah, just right off the bat, what was the most standout moment to you of the sentencing today of Bryan Kohberger?
Oh, you couldn't have thrown me a bigger, fatter softball.
I know,
it was clearly Olivia Gonzalez, man.
Yeah.
Her thing blew me away, and it was like you're coming out of kind of the devastating victim impact statements from Dylan and Bethany by proxy. She had a friend read hers, and then you had Ben Mogan, and those are all kind of like the heartfelt one. And then Steve got up there and he really restrained himself a lot more than I thought he would.
I was wondering he was going to pick the podium up at some point, and toss it.
I mean, for sure. But Olivia just blew me away.
Yeah.
Just absolutely blew me away. She took back all the power.
Yeah.
It was like that thing where, and frankly, depending on the statute, on what state you're in with regard to victim impact statements, they limit what you can discuss, like what you can talk about. If you're going to be talking about the facts of the case, they typically won't allow it. A lot of times they don't allow you to address the defendant. That's why you'll see when people kind of get highly emotional in the middle of a victim impact statement, you see those clips of people screaming at the defendant and, I want to fucking kill you, shit like that.
Yeah.
They usually shut that down. But I mean, her entire thing was written to address him. So, but Hippler gave wide berth, man. And I was here for it. I thought it was incredibly powerful. I thought it was beautifully written in terms of taking all the power back, not giving this guy everything that those of us who firmly believe and know that he's the guy who did this, not giving him what he wanted, and just throwing it right back in his face and calling him out for the coward and loser that he is. I loved it. I really did. I thought it was very powerful.
I think everybody certainly, delivered what they wanted to deliver in their own way. And I think that's good. I agree, though. I think there was a certain way to reach him and make an impact with him. Unfortunately, talking to him in terms of emotion as a human being, I don't think is it of the loss. He almost seemed to relish in some of it at the beginning. What was your reaction at the beginning when you saw him sitting there? He's kind of bouncing. He's a little comfortable in his chair there, kind of smiling a bit. I don't know. I don't know if it's just my preconceived notion of the guy, but it felt like he was enjoying it at the beginning when everyone was talking about how painful everything was to them. Only did it seem that his mood or his demeanor changed a little bit is when Olivia got up there and Steve first, really, and just started going at him at what really mattered to him deep down.
Yeah. No, I don't know that he was. I mean, you'd have to think that, he was relishing it to some extent. I think that he was able to kind of just mask, and whatever he was feeling internally. And, I mean, the reality is these kind of people are dead inside.
Yeah.
They don't feel things like we feel, I mean, that's the fact of the matter. I mean, whatever joy he may have been deriving from hearing about their suffering, it's going to be limited facially in terms of what we're seeing to what his body allows him to do. Because, I mean, the guy just doesn't feel the way that we feel.
Yeah.
He doesn't experience joy and pain the way that normal people do. And that's pretty safe to say that a lot of these guys that do this kind of shit are all kind of built the same way. They're missing that one key component of humanity that the rest of us seem to have. And you're just watching, and it's like my chat was like going crazy. It's like, oh look, it's like observing him. It's like we all want to try to understand why.
I know.
We all want to try to get to the the meat of it in terms of what makes this guy tick, and we're never going to get those answers.
Yeah.
This guy is never going to, it's like all the people in my chat that are siding with Steve in the sense that the state took the coward's way out here by not going to trial and not putting it all out there and making this guy sit through a trial. This guy wouldn't have given a shit.
Yeah.
He would have sat there like the stone golem that he is, emotionless, remorseless, and he was never getting on the stand with some kind of like, I mean, it's like, I don't know what people expect in these types of cases where the people that do the unthinkable then stand mute. It's like you're never going to get truths from them.
Yeah.
Like I was talking about on my channel, like I'm sure that some of the listeners know my father represented John Wayne Gacy back in 1980. And then, 14 years later, the guy's like on the doorstep of, getting strapped to the gurney. I think it was a month before that or a couple of months before it. And he finally does this lengthy interview and he walks in with these big binders and he's flipping, and they're asking questions about the murders. And this guy's like, he's about to be put to death and he's still denying that he did shit.
Yeah.
It's like those guys, it's like, and that guy had 27 kids buried in his crawl space. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, these people just don't function the way that we do. And I know it's impossible for us as human beings that do function normally and feel things for us to contemplate and understand. But I mean, some people are just broken.
Yeah.
Like this guy is just missing key components that the rest of us have. And, I mean, I think we talked about this the last time we were on, man. And I think it was right around when we heard that there was going to be a plea.
Yeah.
For me, when you see these victim impact statements, like after a plea and you see what Dylan Mortensen would have been like on the stand, it gives you just an inkling of all the pain that was spared for all of these people that the state would have had to have put up for proof of life. Bethany and Dylan, who were in that house, everybody that was affected, all of those witnesses, and that would have been such a hard, painful thing to do. And you're sparing them that by not going to trial. And this guy, like people not being satisfied that this guy admitted that he did these things. It's hard for me to understand. I mean, because I always go back to, I think people just want to know why. That's why they want the trial. They want to try to understand why, and you don't get those answers.
And you're never there. And even if you have the why it's not like you're going to be like, oh, well, that makes sense.
Right.
Like, oh, I get it. Oh, like, whatever it is just him expressing his twisted, messed up way of thinking and how he justified it in his mind. And does it really matter at the end of the day? Because the why doesn't ever make sense. No. There will be nothing that makes sense in this case for the why. It's not like a case where I had to do this to stop somebody from getting hit by a train, like something where there's like a why for something horrible that happened that could make some sense. This is not that. This is not that. No, this is a broken brain, and you're never going to get a why other than an evil person got close to your kids. And 100%. That's why they died. Yeah,
exactly. Like there is no rationale behind it. There's nothing that will ever make sense to anybody like that. Like, and we just started covering a case about this Aaron Spencer case down in Arkansas, where that's a case where you understand why. That case, real briefly, is you have a father whose daughter, who was 13 at the time, had been sexually abused several times by this 67-year-old guy. This guy was charged with 43 counts of aggravated sexual assault, cyber stalking, all the things, and he got a very low bond. This guy got he had to post $5,000 with 43 heavy duty pending counts, and he's out and about in this small area down in Arkansas, around Cabot, Arkansas. And this guy somehow lures that very girl, his victim, out into his truck. The family is woken up by the dog barking. The dad, Aaron, goes into his daughter's bedroom. She's not there. They're freaking out. They're like, where, they're screaming throughout the house. He jumps in his truck and he finds this guy driving with his daughter in the truck with him. He runs him off the road. He's screaming at him to let my fucking daughter out of that truck right now. Like, and this guy gets out and he's screaming back at him. They're approaching one another. This guy lunges at him and he puts 7 shots right into the guy, kills him dead.
Yeah.
And they charge this guy with second-degree murder, this father, who the system failed.
Yeah.
Like, that guy should not have been like a $5,000 bond on that kind of case is unthinkable.
Yeah.
I mean, like, this is like, so, I mean, in that kind of case,
there's the why.
There's the why.
Yes.
And it's going to be up to be, and this wasn't some vigilanteism.
No.
This wasn't like, that guy had been out for 3 months. If he was a vigilante, he would have done what Gary Pluchet had done and hidden by a phone bank and turned around when he's walking cuffed. That's vigilanteism. This is a guy who was trying to save his daughter and who ultimately did save his daughter. So in those kind of cases, you're going to get a why.
Sure.
With guys like this who are just fundamentally broken. In what way, we have no idea. That's what the Kathleen Ramslands of the world try to figure out.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, when you look, I mean, just watching his demeanor today in court, just his lack of demeanor, I guess you could say in some cases. I mean, can you imagine having this person as your child? I mean, this is where, and I from what I have understood, I believe his mother, Kohberger's mother, was there, and his sister today. I don't know about the dad. That's based on Brian Enton's reporting. He was in the courtroom. But I mean, this is how he is. I don't know that this is necessarily the changed version of Bryan Kohberger after the crimes were committed. I'm guessing this is Brian. This is how Brian probably carried himself prior to the crimes and for most of his life. And yeah, I mean, if that's your, I mean, I see why the sisters were completely convinced right away that maybe Brian is the one who did this, why they went out and looked into his car. Because if that's your brother, that's your kid, my God. I mean, those parents, I maybe being a little blissfully unaware was a blessing to his parents to a certain extent. Because if you're a little bit more, my God, that's your kid. I'd be waiting for like the call, like when did he execute a bunch of people?
I mean, you're like, but you're a father and like you never like. I can't imagine ever getting to that point, even if your kid's like odd. You know what I mean? Like
odd.
If your kid's like, but like, I mean, you don't know how much they were involved in terms of like when he's college aged and like they're not with them every day, as a younger kid. He was overweight.
They clearly knew up into his college years. I mean, dad going out there talking to the neighbors, hey, be friends with my boy. He's, they always knew they kind of had to advocate for him a little bit in some of those social ways because he never seemed to be able to himself. And maybe that's, you try to think of it like that. Some people are just, a little awkward. He's got autism. That can certainly mess with your social skills or lack thereof. But you don't, I think, ever think that your kid's going to go.
That's what I mean.
Far. Yeah. I mean,
like your brain's not going to go there. You know what I mean? Like your brain won't allow you to go there.
Yeah.
And then, but like you said, like when something goes down and you're like, oh my God, it's like, maybe you kind of always knew it deep down, but you just couldn't bring yourself to
he's
admit
capable.
it.
Yeah. No, he's capable of it, but you're just like, I don't like he's capable, but I don't think he would. And,
right.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I feel, and I talk about this on my regular podcast all the time, it's like I've represented some people that have been convicted of some awful, awful shit, man. Like life taking type shit.
Yeah.
And, I'm dealing with my client's family.
Mhm.
And, these people, like Anthony Garcia in particular, like his family were like the most wonderful, warm, hardworking immigrants that came to this country. And like his father was like a retired postal guy. His mother is a still working RN. And these were just like salt of the earth people who
Yeah.
were just absolutely devastated. And neither of them had any inkling of what Tony would become.
Yeah.
Like, and he had some of the same kind of qualities. Like he didn't have a ton of friends growing up, and and it's like, I mean, they're victims in a vastly different way.
Yeah.
And then the victims themselves, and obviously the families of the victims. But I mean, it's like you can't help. And actually, Kaylee's mother said that. I thought it was powerful. I
Mhm.
really appreciated the fact that she acknowledged that there's Kohberger's destroyed his family's name
Yeah.
forever.
Yeah.
Like he's destroyed his siblings and his parents' lives forever. I mean, you're never going to shake that stink.
No.
I mean, like their lives have been altered in a way that can never be fixed,
Mhm.
short of changing your name. And like, I mean, everything about these cases is so devastating because it's just the reach
Yeah.
is so vast, and it's like, you see it a little bit in these victim impact statements where you've got, friends, and there weren't even really any friends. It was like primarily family today.
Yeah.
They really kind of tailored it and kept it kind of to the families, which I respected. Because oftentimes you'll see friends and stuff like that come in and they'll give their little statements. But when you have a situation like that where you can hear it and you can hear the devastation with your own ears, and you start thinking about the reach of how far it goes just beyond the victims' families. It's like everyone that these kids came in contact to, whether it be teachers, friends, people they worked with, like anybody that had a significant moment or moments with these kids feels it deeply, and it's like you just come to realize like how devastating these things are and how senseless they are. And which again always leads us back to the road as to why,
Mhm.
and sometimes there's just no good reason, and
Yeah.
like this dude, like there's never anything that this guy would say that would make you, like you said, like, oh, okay, well, that makes sense. That's never happening here, and it's like it's just our morbid curiosity as a country, really, and as a society, really, that just kind of, we always want to know why, and we want to know the details of it. Like I'm thrilled this thing didn't go to trial. I am beyond thrilled that I didn't have to spend 3 months like streaming this every day, like because it takes it out of you. It's like a emotionally taxing, and it's hard to watch, and it's hard to listen to, and it's impossible to understand.
I completely agree. I feel like this one particularly, I couldn't imagine. I mean, just doing 2 hours of that one live with the victim impact statement, seeing how this would have been drawn out, all these people that would have been on the stand, all to eventually end up at the resolution of he did it. I think that would have been more detrimental at the end of the day for the family. I totally get Steve Gonzalves' feelings. If
Me
I was
too.
Steve, I'd probably still feel the same way.
Me too.
But I would also be happy that there are folks that are a little bit more removed from it that can see a little bit further down the line for me, and also have that best interest at heart of let's make this less difficult for everybody and try to tamper this down as much as we can in such a horrible situation. And at the end, I think it was the right thing. He admitted to it. Okay, good. We
Right.
are done.
Yeah.
I mean,
I mean,
could you
I
imagine going through all of that and then you get one hung juror, you get one juror that, is a pro burger and was still believing that BS?
oh my God. Or I mean, like the other part of it, like you get through the trial, he's convicted, and then you're set up for 20 plus years
Mm-hmm.
of appeals and post conviction shit.
You're going
And
forever.
if you don't think that these families are acutely aware of every time something is filed on this guy. It just keeps reopening that gaping wound over and over and over again. And like we talked about the last time, I mean, no one is going to sit there and explain to these people what this guy is trying to accomplish with these appeals. So they're sitting there in a state of terror. Like, is this guy going to get another trial? Like they have no idea, dude. Like 20 years of that shit plus, sometimes 30, sometimes 40. Like, I mean, it's one of those things where you've given them this ability to be able to move on as much as you possibly can, which you're never not feeling that every day of your life.
Sure.
If that happens to your loved one, but at least it allows you to not have that always be like omnipresent, because this guy's constantly filing shit in court, whether a year or two passes and then the appeal, and then they appeal that appeal, and then they try to bring it up to the Supreme Court, and then they go over to the post-conviction. It's a grueling process, and it just keeps these families in a state of never-ending grief that just is continually being shoved in their face, because they're having to continue to think about the crime itself, as opposed to just trying to focus on all the things that you remember that brought you joy about that family member that you love so much. And it's just like, for me, man, and like you started to see Steve's still feeling it.
Oh yeah.
Still, but you saw a little bit of a shift.
Yeah.
You know, like you saw him like kind of like he still thinks that Bill Thompson took the coward's way out, you know, but I think as time progresses, Steve will get all the way there. Like if you were to talk to him in 5 years, you know, I think if you were to ask him flat out, would you have liked to have seen him executed? His answer will absolutely be yes, of course.
Sure.
But I think he'll appreciate the fact that he's been able to move on in a way that he would not have been able to move on had this thing gone to trial and had he been convicted.
Well, quite honestly, I think at the end of the day, if we're talking about wanting Kohberger to get the death penalty and the firing squad, which would have inevitably taken 10, 20, 30 years to act if it ever happened, I think your odds, if I were a betting man and to go, what's the better odds of him dying faster? Going to prison or waiting on death row? I'm going to go with going to prison.
Prison justice, man. That's no joke, bro.
I don't give him 5 years, quite honestly. I think he's going to go out faster than Dahmer. What I was, I guess, a little surprised by was the sheer amounts of calls for people in prison to kill him and violate him in these statements. I applauded. I thought it was wonderful. I'm like, this is great, because I wonder how much Kohberger thinks about those things, or fears those sort of things, or cares about those sort of things. I don't know, but
it'll depend on where they plop him in there, right?
Yeah.
I can't imagine that he'll be in Gen Pop. If he's in Gen Pop, he's not going to last long.
At least not right away.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, they typically put these guys, they have their own wing of the worst of the worst. I don't know that he'll be getting rec time with the rest of the guys in there. If he does, I mean, because they tried to take out Gacy too. Like Gacy very early on in his sentence, like somebody tried to kill him with a fork. You know, I mean, it's like there are rules in prison, and there are certain offenders that when they get in there, they are made to understand right away, you're short time in here, dude. Like we don't mess with your kind in here. You know, anybody that befalls like harm to children, they typically just don't survive.
Yeah. I would not be surprised if it ends early for him, and that would be lovely. Speaking earlier, we're talking about the appeals. Obviously, you know, he can't appeal. They can file the notice that they explain this to me. You're the attorney, because there's a lot of concern out there about, could he ever get an appeal? I know he can't technically, but I mean, there's I mean, crazier things have happened. There's people that have been sentenced to life, no possibility of parole, blah, 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 blah. And somehow, they're out. What is there any chance in this case? Can you give us some insight there?
No, they're like if people are, I knew I was going to start getting a lot of questions when Hitler said it during when he was imposing the sentence. And that's just boilerplate language in terms of your appellate rights. You got to get that notice filed. Could he theoretically come up with a direct appeal wherein he's trying to establish ineffective assistance of counsel by stating that he was, misinformed or was not represented properly by Ann Taylor? Maybe, it'll go nowhere. It'll be rejected nearly immediately because of the waiver. Down the road, could he potentially file a post-conviction relief act petition or whatever the equivalent is in Idaho? Theoretically, but for that, again, you're living in the world of ineffective assistance of counsel and or newly discovered evidence. Like those are the things that typically in a typical case where a defendant has not waived their appellate rights and they go through the process and they've failed at the appellate on direct appeal, and then you appeal that decision, and then you appeal it up once more once that gets affirmed. And then once the state Supreme Court shuts you down at that point, then you start looking into, and you don't even have to wait for post-conviction relief act stuff, because that's where you bring in, and a lot of people are always confused about appeals. Like that's like, you don't bring in newly discovered evidence in an appeal saying, oh, look what we discovered after the trial was over, so we're appealing it. No, that's the appeals deal only with the issues of pretrial and trial. That's it, direct appeal. Post-conviction petitions is where you deal with newly discovered stuff. They're civil in nature. It's done, and ultimately it ends up in the trial court, the very trial court. But I don't anticipate in this situation that's ever going to happen. I roundly reject this concept that Kohberger's mindset was, oh, I'm just going to plead this out to take the pressure of the trial off me so that I can prepare my appeals. Like that, whenever I hear people say it, I'm snickering in my head because it's absurd. It's patently absurd.
Well, I mean,
it's not happening. The guy would have 20 years to appeal shit on a death penalty case.
Well, and the thing is, this is not a case where, he's still saying he's innocent. He's flat out admitted guilt. So it's not like he was found guilty after a trial. Right. He's admitted guilt. I mean, I would imagine that makes it a hell of a lot more difficult too, if you're going to try and appeal something you admitted guilt to, and then we're sentenced for.
Yeah. And, the interesting thing, there's a dynamic in Idaho that you always have to kind of account for. And it's the fact that they don't have the insanity defense there. You cannot use the insanity defense. I've talked about it a lot when we covered Lori Vallow's case. They have a carve out, like a small carve out, wherein you could challenge the mens rea portion of a statute, which means that you're saying that, okay, because of this person's mental state, they were incapable of knowing that they were committing a crime. Like I always gave the example of, like, if Lori Vallow actually believed that her kids were demons and that they weren't human beings, because part of the statute, the homicide statute, is that you're taking the life of another human being without just cause, right? So that you have to prove, that's why you see these proof of life witnesses in every trial that you'll see that's a murder trial. You have to prove that they were an actual person alive on this planet. They call that proof of life. You see the proof of death typically through the medical examiner and cops, but usually the ME comes in and they talk about the cause of death. And so in that very narrow circumstance, you can bring up a mental disease or defect in Idaho only to say that the person could not have fulfilled that aspect of the statute, the mens rea, the mental part of the statute, because they weren't able to tell that what was reality and what was not, which is obviously a tough thing to do. in terms of trying to prove it in a court of law. Like people that have never dealt with somebody that has gone through either psychosis or paranoid schizophrenia, where that shit is so vivid for these people that it's true to them. You know what I mean? Those things exist in the world. Mental illness is a real thing. But it's very, very difficult for people to really kind of come to grips with things that they just don't understand because it seems implausible. You know what I mean? So like that part of it in terms of, but you're really kind of attacking the lack of the ability to bring that defense on a much grander scale. Because at the end of the day, if that was allowable, I don't know that Kohberger would have allowed for it. Like I was always of the mindset that Lori Vallow would have no part of it. She wasn't like, I'm not the crazy one. You fucks are the crazy one. You guys don't believe, like, we're telling you end of days is, all her bullshit, and like, but I think that like she believes it. Like I still, when I watch that unhinged, crazy woman, and like the fact that she can sit in a court of law and talk about, these crimes and represent herself somewhat capably, doesn't mean that she's not batshit crazy.
Yeah, exactly.
I think everybody thinks that if like you're mentally ill, that you have to be frothing at the mouth and walking around like a drooling, sweating. Like that's not what it means.
If only everyone who was crazy acted like that, it would make them
so
much easier. Yeah, exactly.
It would be so evident. We're like, look at him. He's frothing at the mouth.
Exactly.
Like that guy's clearly insane.
Exactly.
Yeah, that would make our lives way, way easier. Just not the case.
They're frothing. Oh, it's another one. Maybe this one's rabies, though.
Yeah. Exactly.
What do you think was going on? Let me back up here a little bit. With the Kohberger team going to the state and saying, okay, we want to look at doing a plea deal here at the last minute. How long was it that Ann Taylor had direct knowledge that Kohberger was guilty? Is this something where towards the end he said, I'll take the plea because I did it? I mean, how does that work on the back end? Like what was going on in those conversations?
It's hard to say, because interestingly, Thompson brought it up, that at some point Ann Taylor is sitting in open court saying my client's factually innocent. He brought that up, which I thought was unusual, but you're going through the evidence as the attorney, and you have this weird dichotomy because you've got a client who I'm sure Kohberger initially was saying that I didn't do this. I'm innocent. And as an attorney for the defense, you have to accept what your client is saying to you as their truth. And then when the discovery starts coming in, that's when you sit down and you say, all right, well, you're telling me this, but this is the evidence that they've been able to gather against you. And I'm here to tell you that we've got some real problems. We've got this sheath that, we'll do everything that we can to try to get it, booted and barred from being entered into evidence. But, I don't want you, holding your hopes up. It's like, so you try to go through with your clients and what the evidence is, and whether or not Bryan Kohberger at some point was like, you know what, I did this. I doubt highly. I think it was more a situation wherein Ann Taylor went to her client and said, look, at this point, I feel pretty strongly that you're going to be convicted on this. They have evidence. It's powerful. You've seen the way that we've been able to challenge it in terms of our motion work. We've tried to have things suppressed. That was not successful. Those are the motions that we needed to file. When they're not successful, that means that evidence is coming in. And when they start presenting all this evidence, Bryan, I think the likely result is going to be they're going to find you guilty of these crimes. And then, you switch the conversation to the death penalty aspect of it, which had this gone to trial, the death penalty phase would have been in a whole nother trial.
Yeah.
And she was doing everything that she's required to do as his attorney in terms of his autism, and saying that the death penalty is akin to cruel and unusual punishment because of his mental disabilities and things like that. And that would have all come out. And, he wasn't successful in those motions either. And, she says, look, the way this thing's going to shake out is you're going to be found guilty, and they're going to give you the death penalty. Like, that's my honest opinion as your attorney. I think that that's where this road is leading. Do you, based on what I've just told you, do you want me to go to see if they'll make a plea agreement, if they'll drop the death penalty in exchange for you pleading guilty and agreeing to, 4 life sentences without the possibility of parole? Like it had to have been that conversation, because he did it, meaning he pled out. Right. So, I don't think there was ever a coming to Jesus moment for Bryan Kohberger where he just spilled his guts to Ann Taylor, and she's like, oh shit, well, I got to go plead you out.
Yeah.
It's like, and if it did, we'll never know because of attorney-client privilege. But I happen to think it's probably the other way, whereas she just said, look, we did everything we could. We filed everything we could. Nothing is getting suppressed. All of this evidence is coming in, and it's damning. And no one's going to believe that you were driving around stargazing at 4 a.m. No one's going to believe it. Yeah. No one's going to believe that it's just happenstance that your phone happens to be in airplane mode or turned off during the times of the commission of these crimes. No one's going to believe it. They are going to believe that you came and drove by the house the following morning at 9 o'clock for reasons unknown. They're going to believe that because the GPS puts you there. So it's like, it was a powerful case. It just was. Like I don't even listen to the pro-burgers because like their shit doesn't make any sense. I mean, if you stare at something long enough, you can make it to whatever you want it to be.
Sure.
But that doesn't change the facts of what we know. And nothing will ever change the fact that this dude left a sheath with his indisputable single source DNA under the body of 2 beautiful girls. And there's no explanation that's reasonable for it. There's no explanation that a jury ever would have bought. And that alone would have put him down. Like that was it. So, you go to him, and like I said, you say, look, man, this is, we're going to talk turkey here. This isn't a magic show. There's no silver tongue bullshit that's going to go on. And we're not going to get, a not guilty on this thing because, your alibi, if that's what you want to call it, sucks. And you left the sheath with your DNA under 2 of the girls. I mean, that's the conversation you're having, and I mean, when
we look back at this, I guess they really had absolutely nothing. So when Ann Taylor had to come forward and say, the alibi is he likes to stargaze, I'm assuming that probably literally came out of Kohberger's mouth, and she had to go with it because there was nothing else to go with. And in his mind, he probably thought, yeah, this will work.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's almost a shittier alibi than I was home asleep alone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like there's no way to prove it. Oh, well, look, my phone was here. I mean, actually it's worse because in this day and age, like if you connected to your Wi-Fi or if you watched something streaming, I imagine during the times that they're claiming that you were there, and you can say, all right, well, and you're known to live alone, so there's no one else to corroborate your story, but you say, oh, well, I streamed a movie at 3:30 in the morning, or I started streaming a movie at exactly 4:15 a.m. And this is what it was. And you go to Netflix and you get all of their data from his account, and they're like, yeah, this dude started. At least you've got something that can kind of corroborate what you did. When you're out fucking stargazing, you ain't got shit, bro.
No.
Like you've got nothing. So like, and again,
he should have just left the phone at home. If he had left his phone at home, quite honestly, probably could have gotten away with this. And
aside
that's
from
horrible.
the fact that he left a sheath with
I know,
his
but
DNA.
but yes, aside from that, but that would just be that, because you wouldn't have all the pinging. All of that pinging would be gone. And that was a big piece of this. That put him there. The sheath, I mean, you get the car maybe. I don't know.
Sheath is bad.
It's another big piece though.
What is the argument from like and I always think like a defense attorney, I'm like, okay, so say we don't have the pinging, okay, and we'll pretend that the kind of the blurry, video of the car that appears to be very similar to the car that he drives, is there, but
there's
it
plenty
exists.
now. I mean, I think we can say that the video, because there's more than just the earlier one we saw where you can identify it as the Elantra clearly.
Yeah, there's a lot of video out there, but say that he was smart enough to not use his own car and he left his phone home. So we don't have the pinging and we don't have the car videos, and we're left with the sheath with just a single contributor DNA on it. And let's even pretend that we don't have the Amazon purchases with the gift card. Let's pretend all that doesn't exist. All we have is that sheath. Tony, I challenge you to come up with an explanation of how it got there. And if you're going to say, okay, well, the cops planted it, but
no,
why pick that guy? What would possess them to pick? If you don't have any of that other shit, like, how are they going and picking some dude going to Washington State University that's getting his PhD in criminal justice? Like, how does it get there?
Yeah. No,
I could not come up with a reasonable explanation.
If you don't have the Amazon history, if you didn't have that, you could if you didn't have any proof of purchase, or that he had it in his possession, one could argue, well, maybe, he had or lost resale. I mean, there's a lot of ways that you could say somebody got it on there, but there's all the other pieces that point to say it was his because he bought it. It was there. I mean, if you took those other elements away, you could introduce more doubt, or more possibilities, because you wouldn't know the origin of it. You wouldn't know the origin of it then.
Introduce some doubt to me. I love reasonable doubt. Yeah. That's where I live, man.
Well, you wouldn't know if you have no idea where this thing came from and there's no purchase history, then then you don't know where it came from initially. You don't. It's not in his possession.
His DNA's still on it, and they figure out that it's him. All right. So
people sell knives all the time and sheaths and all that stuff, like in a pawn shop.
DNA? Where's their DNA? And how did it get under the girls?
Well, this theoretical is if we take all this evidence out, though. So, so if all you have is the DNA on the sheath and nothing else exists in this scenario.
The DNA on the sheath.
Everything else is gone.
Single contributor.
He went to a pawn shop and checked it out and opened the sheath.
Okay.
And then somebody bought the knife, and then his DNA was on the sheath.
He's suspect. And then we go to the pawnbroker. He's a suspect. And then we go to the pawnbroker's paperwork to see whoever pawned the knife. So we've got 3 suspects at that point, but we still only have one's DNA.
Well, we don't know where the sheath is from. I'm just saying he could say that he. It's true, because then you'd have to say where he went to snap a knife.
Right. I mean, dude, like he had to get it somewhere. So we're gonna sniff his story out.
He was walking down the road and found a sheath one day and picked it up, snapped it, and just threw it back down. I don't know where it's from. I didn't want it. I just left it.
Yeah, then he's an unlucky motherfucker.
He is. He would be. He'd be very unlucky at that.
Indeed.
But that scenario is not what we have. So, but obviously having more pieces to this puzzle certainly helped get us to this point. If it was just the 100%. One, we would have likely been in a trial, I think, because there wouldn't have been all these other pieces that are pointing at him. And the less you have, the more chances of reasonable doubt. I mean, look at Rick Allen. There's nothing there.
Right. And they still convicted him.
They still convicted him.
It's like, I mean, you're right. If none of this other shit existed, if that's the only thing, it's transfer DNA. That's where you're going to get your big transfer DNA argument that, it doesn't mean shit. That could have been, we have no idea when that DNA was placed on that knife. It could have been, 5 owners ago. And now you're trying to pin it on this poor guy. Yeah. I mean, without anything else,
it'd be very hard.
You go to trial on it. So, but fortunately, There was a lot more.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
And that was the linchpin.
Yeah. Without, yeah, I mean, the other pieces are what put it all together, and that's how we got where we are. What do you think was going through Anne's mind today in court as she's sitting there next to him? I noticed she was a little bit further away than she used to be. It seemed in some of those those chairs in that courtroom.
I can tell you definitively what's going
Yeah.
through her mind today is that I saved my client's life.
Yeah.
Like when you're handling a death penalty case, you're and you at some point, once you've gone through all the discovery and you come to the realization on your own, in spite of what your client has told you, that this person more likely than not, beyond a reasonable doubt, has committed this crime, and you kind of come to grips with that, your mode then becomes, all right, well, the government's trying to execute my client. My job is to save his life. And that was what her job became. And I mean, like the one thing that I'd love to ask her is why she came out and said that he was factually innocent early on. And we were talking about this the last time with the plea deal. And I can't remember when that was. Like, I cannot remember where in the process that was. If it was really early,
where she said factually innocent.
Yeah,
right away.
She made that
it was
statement.
Right away. It was right out of the gate.
So that's before. So like, to me, it's a reckless statement. You know, it's frankly, it's unethical for defense attorneys to say that in general and in most jurisdictions, because it's just, you're supposed to say my client's presumed innocent, and that's where we have every intention on showing that at trial, that this guy didn't do it, but to come out and say factually innocent before she had seen the discovery, it was not a great move, and that it's one of those moves that kind of like that move by her really has been fuel to the Kohberger supporters fire. I mean, like when the lawyer's sitting there saying that, and people will give that weight, that's why you have to be very, very careful about saying shit like that, because had she not said that in those words, that my client's factually innocent, that got people to say, okay, well, the woman who's representing him believes him, and she's seen the evidence. Now, if it's true that happened prior to her seeing the evidence, then she should never have said that, because she hadn't seen the evidence yet. And it was a little bit reckless, and it caused, I mean, Tony's still in my chat today. And I have people that are just adamant that this guy didn't do this, and that he's, for some godforsaken reason, pled guilty to 4 things that he didn't do, and namely those homicides. And I'm like,
I think some people, the real world is just too scary. and it's easier to go and conspiracize. That's a new word. Conspiracize things to blunt the impact of that. This guy could be this. But the reality is, well, if he's not the monster, somebody else is. So how is that really fixing anything in one's mind?
Right. Exactly.
But I guess it makes it more unknown.
It's I'm happy to close the chapter on this book, and I just hope that the families can find some form of solace from the fact that this is now over, and they don't have to continue to think about this on the daily basis in terms of the process anymore. They could just focus on their loved ones that are lost, and they can try to kind of move on through life and do whatever they're going to end up doing. And it's like, I was talking about it on my channel. It's like a lot of times families like this that suffer this kind of loss, they get heavily into advocacy, and it becomes like a real motivating factor. I would not be shocked at all to see that, Olivia becomes a very vocal advocate, victims advocate out there. I could see her doing that. I could see her, I don't know what she's doing now for a living, but I could see her going to law school. It's like these kind of tragedies oftentimes push people a different way than they ever would have expected to go in life. And, we'll see how it goes, but I just hope that those families get some peace and a little bit of healing. And I hope that this helps move that along.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
Want more on this case and others? Then press subscribe now and don't miss a moment of true crime coverage from Tony Brueski and the Hidden Killers podcast.